Let's go into our today's session. Before we jump into the session, just let me introduce myself. I'm Dinesh Kumar and I have nearly 10 years of experience in JavaScript programming. Normally, I do UI side programming in AngularJS, React.js, and other things. In server side, I will be using Node.js. In If you guys have any other question regarding this today's session, you can just post it in our question window. You guys know this session is only for 60 minutes. We can extend up to the 90 minutes. Whatever questions you are posting it in this question window, I will be answering once I complete that particular module. Otherwise, we may navigate to some other topic. That's why we are doing it in that particular way. Okay, this session is all about a day in a life of Node.js developer. Normally, what Node.js developer will do? If people whenever sees this Node.js, they are thinking it is a JavaScript programming that will run only on the client side. Because whoever working on this JavaScript, they know the JavaScript will be running only on the browser side, it will be rendered. But this Node.js, if you write any other program on Node.js, it will run it on the server side of your program. So what you can do is, normally you can write a JavaScript on your server side. It will be running on your Node.js environment. It is not only for the UI programming. Okay, so in today's session we will be discussing about normal server side programming, how you can build using this Node.js. So the server side developer, what they will do normally, so they will build their REST APIs, or they will connect to the MongoDB. They will be sharing the information between this MongoDB, or you will be handling all this request response handling. This is what the normal server side JS programmer used to do. Okay, is it possible to do all the things in Node.js? If it is possible, how can we implement? These are all the things we will be discussing on this particular webinar. So objectives of this webinar is understanding the basic development of Node.js development and how can we use NPM, that is Node Package Manager. If you want to include any other external Node modules, we will be including using this NPM. Next, we will build the basic server side components using Node.js and we will be creating a RESTful APIs. Then we'll have to do the unit testing and the code debugging also on this Node.js, because that is really important. So if you are not writing any other unit testing, your code won't be having the full standard, right? That's why you have to write a unit test cases. That also will be covering it in this session. What is Node.js? So Node.js is a open source platform environment where you can write a server side programming and the networking programmings. It is Node.js is basically written in C++, which will compile your JavaScript program. So this Chrome browser internally will be having one engine called Google's V8 engine. So what does an engine do is, it will take your JavaScript program, it will render it on the engine so it can execute your JavaScript programs. In the same way, Node.js is internally having this Google's V8 engine. So whatever code you are writing on the JavaScript, that code will be running on this particular Google's V8 engine and it will execute your code. This is how normal Node.js is working on the server side. So you might have heard this Node.js is a single thread programming. Okay, if it is a single thread programming, how can we handle multiple request and response? Because if a single thread, it will process a single process in at a time. So that is really difficult. Because of that, we can't perform more users, right? So, but the Node.js is a single thread program, but actually it is not using multiple threads internally. It is having one new concept called event loop and event queue. So what is it happening is, whenever you are making a process, this process will be pushed to the event queues. Once this process has been pushed to the event queue, this process one by one will be passed to the event loop, and event loop will be having this callback methods, right? So once the process has been pushed to the event loop, that loop will be pushed to the internal thread pool of the Node.js. So over there, for example, we can have n number of process. One is I want to write something from the file system, or I want to write to any data to the file system, or I want to do some kind of network programming or something, I want to read it from the DB. So these kind of multiple operations I have. So what will happen? So each and every process first will be pushed to the event queue. From the event queue, it will be passed to the event loop. Once it has been passed to the event loop, that particular program will be executed on this internal thread pool of the Node.js. Okay, so what will happen then? Once that callback has come, again this event loop will give the response to the UI or wherever we got this request. So this is how normal Node.js program is working. So why do we need to do it in this particular way? Because if I implement with Java or .NET, we will be having this multi-threading concept and other things. I can implement multiple threads so I can process everything. But here, if you want to do this multi-threading concepts, we may end up with some kind of issues like race conditions or deadlock. If we are getting into these kind of issues, it will take more time to debug or to fix those issues. That is really difficult. So we need not to do, or we need not to handle this kind of multi-threading process. Everything will be handled internally in the Node.js itself. And you can ask one more question: why this actually Randall has built this Node.js environment? Why did he build on this JavaScript? Because JavaScript is internally it is a asynchronous programming. Okay, it is not a synchronous. Whatever process you are writing, everything will be processed asynchronously. So that is the main reason Randall has implemented this Node.js on JavaScript. So let's see the use cases of Node.js. So first, if you are using Node.js, first you need to know why do we need to use and what is the advantage over other traditional web application like Java, .NET or PHP, right? So whenever we use the Node.js, the best advantage is you are using JavaScript in UI as well as server side. If you are using a MongoDB, even the JavaScript will be compiled on MongoDB also. So you can build an end-to-end web application with only one language, that is called JavaScript. And this JavaScript is really simple to learn also. That is one of the biggest advantage. So you might have heard about this Walmart. So this Walmart have changed their website into Node.js, because they will be having one day called Black Friday in US. At the time, most of the people will hit their website and they will be getting things, because that time they will be having some kind of offers. If you want to handle very large amount of users, or if you want to have each and every process is a lightweighted process, we will be using Node.js. Because of using the Node.js, they are handled up to very large amount of users in Walmart. This is one of the use case of Node.js. In the same way, LinkedIn also using Node.js because it is highly scalable. So what you can do, now I am building on some basic applications. Later I want to add some more features and I want to make it very big. So it is really simple to scale your web application also. Next one is Oxa. So these guys are also using Node.js on the server side because of low memory consumption. It will take very less amount of memory to process each and every processes. Okay, so I know guys, now we are still keep on going on this only theory. It might be boring, so we can see the programming, how to write a program on the Node.js and how can we execute that also. First, before you write any program on Node.js, first you have to know what does this mean by npm and why do we need to use it. So npm is a node package manager. It is not built by the Node.js people or other things. So it is a repository available over there. So in this repository, all the node modules will be available. For example, if you guys are a UI developer, so you might have heard, so this bower or other things. In the using the bower, you can install the UI components. In the same way, the node modules, everything will be available in the npm repository. If you want to build any other application, you need not to build it from the scratch. Just directly you can go to the npm repository. From there you can pull those particular modules and you can use it in your project. So these modules can be installed locally as well as globally. So what does it mean? For example, we have some module called Express. Express is a framework we will be using it in the Node.js. So that Node.js that Express framework will be using only for my project alone. For another project, I can use some other framework like Kova or Hails also, right? So that module is only specific to one project. Those kind of modules we will be installing locally in our machine only for that particular project. If I want to access those modules globally from anywhere in the machine for all other projects also, we will be installing these npm modules globally. For example, for this global modules, that is main thing as a grunt. Grunt is a task runner we can use for all the projects also. So these kind of modules we will be installing globally using npm. Okay, so let's see how can we create a normal server side component in our Node.js using the basic framework called Express. So do you guys have any question till this part? If yes, please post your questions in this question window. So from Ganesh, we have a question. How Node.js will serve huge number of requests? Right. Um, so Node.js is what is happening. Each and every process is lightweighted, right? For example, if you ask me, each and every process will take only less memory, that is 4 KB per process. If you are using 4 GB RAM machine, what will happen? So if you are taking for each and every processes, if you are taking only 4 KB, you know how much process you can process at a single second. And one more, the best advantage of Node.js is you can create n number of instances also. For example, my machine is a 4-core machine. If 4-core machine, if I run a particular process, that process will be running in only one core. But what I wanted to do, I want to create multiple instances and I want to run my application. For that, we have one module called cluster. Using this cluster module, we can fork n number of instances of your application. If you are creating n number of instances, through this, you should be able to support very huge number of requests. For example, if one request is handling 1 million customers, if you are creating n number of clusters, for example, only my local machine itself, just it is having 8 GB RAM machine, that itself can handle 8 million users per second. This is the real advantage of Node.js. From Kunal, we have a question. What exactly is an event loop? So, normally in traditional web applications, to process multiple threads, so what we will be doing, we will be creating this multi-thread programming. Each and every process will be assigned to one thread. Then we can process multiple processes parallelly. That's why we'll be going for this multi-thread programming. Here Node.js is a single threaded, but I wanted to process multiple processes parallelly. So how can I do this? For that, the Node.js internally have a component and or a feature called the event loop. So what will happen is each and every process or request will be pushed to the event loop, that is a queue. Okay, once the request, everything will be available on the event queue, those requests will be passed to the event loop called one mechanism. Over here, what will happen, each and every process will be having its own callback method. Okay, for example, just consider this. I have 3 requests at the same time. My first request will take 5 seconds to complete, and my second request will take 2 seconds to complete. But first I posted my first request, second my second request. What will happen, each and every request will run parallelly and it will give a data. First request will be pushed to this client, pushed to the thread pool, and the second request also will be pushed to the thread pool. Over there, second request will be getting the response because it will take only 2 seconds to process. Once its second request gets the response, it won't wait for the first request to complete. Directly it is asynchronous programming and it is having its own callback method. The callback method will be getting triggered and it gives the response of the second request first, then the first request response will be going. So it won't block anything. That's why we are calling this Node.js as a non-blocking mechanism. Next, from Anbarasi we have a question. How Node.js is support for socket and messages? Node.js is having one node module called sockets. So using this socket IO, we can push the data from server to client or client to server. Using this only, we will be using some kind of chat web application that we can see it in the demo. Okay, so let's go for a demo. So if you guys have any other question, just post it in the question window. Once if we finish this particular demo, I can answer for all your questions. So first, if you want to run your Node.js, what you need to do is you have to install Node on your local machine. Directly you can go to the node.org. From there you should be able to install this Node.js. Once this Node.js installed, first you have to verify whether this Node.js is installed or not. To verify this, we will be using one command called node-v. So what it will do, it will give the version of Node.js installed in your machine. You can see it over here, that is 0.12.0. This is the Node version available in your machine. Okay, so we have seen one module called npm also to install our Node module. Do we need to install externally for this? No need to do that. If you are using the latest version of Node, that internally is having npm also. If you are installing Node, automatically this npm also will be installed in your machine. So to check the npm, just type npm-v. It will give the version of npm available in your machine. In the same way, if you want to see where this node installed, just type which node. So it will give the path where this node has been installed. In the same way, if you want to see the npm also, we can give just npm which npm. So it will give the full path where this npm and other things installed. This is how we will be checking where Node.js installed or where npm modules are available. Then I want to write a basic program on Node.js. How can I write? So Node internally is having one tool called REPL. Using this REPL, you should be able to write all the program in the terminal itself. So how can we access this REPL or terminal of Node.js? So just type node in your terminal. Because I have installed this node globally, this particular node path also will be available in your environment variable if you are having Windows machine. So if it is available in the environment variable, wherever you are, that doesn't matter. You can type node. It will take you to the node terminal. So just I'm typing node terminal. Now you can see I'm inside this node terminal. I can write all the JavaScript program. For example, I want to declare a variable where a equal to 10 and where b equal to 20, where c equal to a plus b. So I'm writing a basic JavaScript program and I wanted to print this particular C in our console. How can we do this? Console. It will give the value of the C in the console. I wrote a basic JavaScript program on the node terminal. This is how you can write all the JavaScript programming over here. This JavaScript will be compiled in this Google's V8 engine. It will give the result. Okay, now we wrote the basic JavaScript program on the terminal. Okay, normally we won't be building everything in the terminal. We have to write a code. That code has to compiled in this node environment. How can we do this? Because as a server-side developer, so what we will do, first we will be exposing our web APIs for the UI developers. Just those UI developers will be consuming the web APIs and they will display the data. For that, we can use one module called Express. That is a framework. That is a very famous framework available in this Node.js. Using that framework, we can create the REST APIs create a REST API very easily. Let me show you. Already I wrote a program right here to expose a basic web API, and using that web API I want to post the data to the MongoDB and I wanted to read the data. So how can we do this? First, if you want to use any other npm module, what you need to do, you have to install that module in your project. So once you installed your modules, let me show that to you. First we will be creating a package.json. Whatever module you wanted to use it for your project, those modules will be available in this dependencies. For example, in my project I wanted to use body parser, express and mongoose. So this body parser is to parse your request body object. Because we will be sending all the parameter from the UI to server in the body only. So you have to convert those body element, which will be a JSON object or anything else, right? So we have to pass the data. For that we will be using this body parser as a middle layer. Then we are going to use Express as a framework and Mongoose to connect to the MongoDB. So if you guys are a Java developer, you might have we will be having kind of JDBC or ODBC drivers to connect to SQL DB. In the same way, if you want to connect to MongoDB, we will be using this mongoose module. So let's go to the program. Let's see how can we see. How can we write this? First, I want to use express module in my application. For that, already you mentioned your dependency in your package.json. Once you're mentioning all the dependencies, if you write npm install, it will download all the dependencies, and those dependencies will be available in this node modules. You can see whatever dependencies I wrote in the dependency, those things are available. Body parser, express, and mongoose. Then I wanted to use this particular module in the application. So how can we use it? Using this function called require. This require give that module name. It will fetch the module from this node modules, and it will give that instance of the module on this express. In the same way, whatever module you wanted to use, just give require and the module name. So we'll be having require in this require variable and body parser in this body parser variable. Let's see these things a little bit later. Now what I wanted to do, just I want to create a server. So to create the server, it is really simple in Node.js. So already we got this express module, and we assigned that express module instantiate. We are here instantiating that express module, and we are assigning that to this app. So this app will be all the functionality of this express module. If you want to access any other express function, that will be available in this app variable. From this app variable, you should be able to access it. Now first I want to create a server which will be listening to particular port. Now here what I am doing, so I am listening to this particular port 9000. So this app will be having all the express features. So one of the feature is listen. So if you are making app.listen to 9000, what will happen? Your application will be listening for this 9000 port. So whatever request and response you are sending, if it is in the 9000 port, it will be processed on this particular server. This is what you are mentioning. So just to create a server, what you had to do, app.listen of whatever port you wanted to listen. Once it started listening, I have just one method called listening to port number 9000. Okay, this is how we will be creating a basic Node.js server. Let's see how can we start this. Now I am going to come out of this Node terminal. So I have that particular program in folder called routes. CD routes. So inside this routes, if you see, we will be having package.json, app.js, node modules, and client. So in this package.json, it is a just metadata of your project. So whatever information you wanted to give, all the information you can mention it in this package.json. Then if you want to start your app, so I have mentioned those configurations in this app.js. For example, where I wanted to listen, and if you want to create any other routes. So this REST API only, we will be calling it as a routes in Node.js. Now what I want to do, I want to just start my application. I want to listen for particular port. So just write node, and whatever the JavaScript file you wanted to run, just give that file name app.js. Whenever I node app.js, however we are typing the node, it is taking to the node terminal. In the same way, if you are giving node space some particular JavaScript name, so that JavaScript will be executed on the node, and it will be listening for that particular port. Because here we mentioned that particular application has to listen for port number 9000. That's why we are printing a message listening to port 9000. Now this application is listening to port 9000. So whatever the request you are sending, that request will be coming to this particular server, and we can process it over here. Okay, now we created a basic server. How can I create a request over here? Because as a server side developers, what we do, we will be creating the REST APIs. When the UI hit that REST API, we'll take that request, whatever you wanted to do. For example, whenever I hit something get user information, so we have to get the data from your DB. It can be anything, SQL, Oracle, or MongoDB. For this particular demo, we are using MongoDB to get the information. How can you create this REST API? If you are using traditional web application, we have to use something struts or servlets, other things to create this exposed web APIs. But here I don't want to do everything. Just it's a basic JavaScript program, and I am using this Express framework. So let's see how can we create a basic REST APIs in Node.js. Already we created this app. So this app will be having all these Express features. In the Express is having a feature called routers. On this router will be having all the request response handling methods, something like get, post, put, delete, everything. For example, if I want to create a get method, what I will be doing, app.get, and I can give the path wherever I wanted to listen. For example, whenever user hits localhost 9000 / API / user, if that URL is this one and method is a get method, I want to come inside this particular route, and I wanted to do some kind of basic operation. Let me comment these things. Now I created just empty route. So this empty route will be having two parameters. One is request, another one is response. For this particular request, what is the response I wanted to send? So let me hardcode the response for now here. If any user makes a request, I wanted to send this as a response. I want to send this response as a JSON. Whatever response you want to send, just type it over here. Data. Yes, I'm going to send something called success. So this is what I want to do. As a server-side developer, we won't be writing any other UI programming code. So I want to validate these kind of REST APIs also. How can we validate? We have more tools, something like a REST client APIs or a Postman. Using this Postman or REST client APIs, you should be able to validate all your REST APIs. So let's see how can we validate that. Now I install this Postman. Just give me a minute, it will open. Yeah. So here I have one method called API / users. This is what the URL I have given, and my application is listening on this particular port, that is 9000, and application is running locally. That's why I have given localhost. If it is running external, you can give that particular external machine IP. Now I have giving localhost 9000 and URL is /API, and the method of this REST API is just get. Right? So whenever I give this, it will come to this 9000 port. It is running this particular application. On this application, it will search for a get method. So okay, it got the get method. Then what is the URL I'm giving? That is /API / users. So it will search for a API / users. When it finds that particular URL, it comes to that method. It will execute whatever logic we have implemented over there. So I want to validate whether it is working fine or not. So I'm giving all the things and click on send. Okay, so I have to restart my application. So because before I make the change, I have already started the application. That's why it's giving the old response. I want to restart the application, then only this data will get updated. Node app.js. Now it is listening to port number 9000. Now let me hit this. Whenever I hit this, whatever response we hard coded, we are getting that response. In the same way, I don't want to get this kind of hard coded response. I want to do some kind of process, and I want to get the data from the DB. How can we do? Let's see how can we configure MongoDB in our application. Once you installed MongoDB locally, I have all the data in the MongoDB. I wanted to get the data from there. So how can we get it? We have one module called Mongoose. Using this module, you can query the MongoDB. You should be able to get all the informations. Here, I got this Mongoose module using this require. So we'll be having all the functionality of this Mongoose in this Mongoose variable. So mongoose.connect, this is how we'll be connecting to the database. Mongoose.connect MongoDB, and wherever you have the database. For example, localhost, if you have, just you can mention localhost : where the database is running. This is the port number, and what is your database name. I'm giving my database name as a REST API. So this is done. Again, in MongoDB, we will be having collections. It is similar to tables in SQL, right? So these collections will be having n number of documents. Documents are similar to your records in the table. Okay, so now I have a collection. So how does this collection should look like? Because MongoDB is not a table structure data, it is a full and full JSON object. You can store the full JSON object inside this collections, right? So if you can store the JSON object inside, the JSON object, how it should look like, the structure of the JSON object you have to mention. That is what we are calling it as a schema of your MongoDB collection. Okay, here I am creating a schema. My collection should have three fields. One is name, another one is age, the next field is designation. If you want any field as a unique, you can pass that also. For example, I don't want to give like this. I want to give some other information also. I want to mention this name as a unique field. Name as unique true. So if you mention this particular attribute in your schema of your MongoDB, what will happen? Whenever you are inserting the duplicate data inside the Mongos, it will throw a E11100 error. It will show, okay, already this data is available. Don't insert a duplicate data. So we can write this kind of validations over here also. But now I don't want to give this as a unique because name can't be a unique. If you have ID, that can be unique. So I'm just going to make it as only string. Now I'm making name as a string field, age as a number, and designation as a string. Inside this again, instead of a number, if I pass any other string for the age, that also will throw an error. Now I created a schema of my particular collection. Okay, for which collection I wanted to give the schema. For that only we will be having one method called model. So mongoose.model of pass the collection name and the schema whatever we created. For the users collection, I want to give the schema called user schema. So this particular collection in the MongoDB will be having this schema. It will accept only this data. Now we have all this database and we set up a particular collection for this record also. So let's go over here. Let me delete this. Now we created a user schema and this user collection will be available on this particular variable called user. It is like your table. Inside the table you can push the data or get the data, other things you can do. For here what I wanted to do, I want to get all the data from this particular table. So user.find, if you are, I'm giving just a empty condition over here. Instead of that, if you want to pass some condition like where name equal to xxx, so at that time it will find if the name is matches this condition, then that will get only those information. That's why we will be using this find, but I'm giving the empty condition, so it will get all the records. Here it is a call, it will be having the callback method. One is the error and another one is the object. You have to handle all the errors over here, otherwise it will crash your Node.js server. So what I'm doing, I'm getting this error message. I'm checking whether it is throwing any other error or not. If it is an error, I'm handling this error right here and giving that error message to the UI. Otherwise, I'm just sending whatever data available. So let's see how it is working. Now again, I need to restart the Node.js. I restarted the application. Now it's listening to port number 9000. In the same way, I'm going to hit API/users. So the API/user and get method will come to this particular route, and from here on this particular collection, that is called the users collection. User collection, whatever data is available, it will fetch it. So from here, I'm going to hit. Okay, it's not refreshed, it seems. Let me restart once again. Okay, I didn't save this file, that's why it's not restarted. Now only I'm saving. It is running to port number 9000. Now I'm going to hit. Whenever I click make the request, it is going to the DB and it's querying the DB. It's getting this information from my MongoDB. You can see my first data is Dinesh, age 30 and developer. In the same way, I have n number of datas over there. So let's see whether I have this kind of datas in the MongoDB. Just I'm going to stop the server. Mongo. So it is taking to me to the Mongo terminal, so I can write all the MongoDB queries over here. I want to see what are all the DBs available. So show DBs will show whatever the DBs available over here. Now I have Metro Caps and REST APIs, this kind of DBs. Let me use this REST API DB because that DB only we are using it in our application. Use REST API, so we will be taking that DB. Then let's see whatever collections available that is similar to the table. Show collections. So I think so I used okay, it is I used instead of REST I used some other name, that is not why it is not having any other collection. I had to use REST API. Show collections, it is having that collection whatever you created, that is users. Now I want to see whatever data is available on this collection. db.users.find. So whenever I execute this particular query, it is giving me all the data. One is Dinesh age 30 and another one is Prem 24, some ASD 21, new user something. Like this we will be creating REST APIs in our Node.js. In the same way we can create post queries also. Just let's see how can we create the post queries. If you want to post any other data, we'll be using app. I'm going to use the post method. I will be using the same URL, but I want to post the data. Post the data means you will be sending some data from your UI in the request. So whatever data we are sending through the request, we have to read it. How can we read those data? Those data will be available in the request body. We are using body parser. This body parser will pass your request body. It will give the proper JSON object whatever you are sending. So we will be able to get this body using this create or save method. You can push those data inside your MongoDB. This is how we will be posting the data to MongoDB, and to get method we can able to get the data. So if you guys have any other question regarding this Mongoose or REST APIs on Node.js, please post your questions on this question window. We'll spend 5 minutes for these questions. So from Sweta, we have a question. Is it a case sensitive? Yeah, I mean actually JavaScript is a case sensitive. We are writing all the program in JavaScript, so it is a Node.js also case sensitive. From Mother, we have a question. Can you explain body parser once again? Yeah, sure, Mother. So what I wanted to do, we'll be posting the data through the request only. So let me show you that also. I'm going to use some post method. So in the post method, we will be sending some data from our UI to server side. So how we'll be sending is, if you are using $Ajax or if you are using AngularJS, we'll be using $HTTP method. Using the $HTTP method, we will be attaching some data to the request body. So whatever the data you are attaching to the request body, you have to read it on your server side. If you want to read it on your server side, you have to pass the request. If you are not passing the request, you can't get this particular JSON object whatever you are sending it from the UI, right? So to pass your request, we will be using body parser. Okay, now I'm just have this body parser alone. How will it pass this in our server side? So we will be using this body parser as a middle layer in our Node.js application. You can see it over here in the line number 19. We are using app.use of body parser. So each and every request will pass through this middle layer, and in this middle layer we are using the body parser, which will pass your request and it gives the data to the particular server method. This is why we will be using body parser in Node.js application. So from Madhav, we have a question. What is Mongoose model? It is similar to your table. If you want to create a particular table in the SQL, we will be creating a table. The table will be having n number of records. But in this MongoDB, we won't be having a concept called a table. We will be having concept called collection. So each and every collection will be having the records. To create the collections, we will be using this mongoose.model method, which creates that users collection, and the users collections will be having that particular schema. Whatever schema structure you are giving, that user collection will be bounded to that schema. This is why we will be using mongoose.model method. From Richa, we have a question. How can we use MySQL like database? Can you give an example? Yeah, sure, Richa. So what you can do is you can get a npm module called MSSQL. So if you want to just get the npm module, npm MSSQL. So this is the module which will act like our mongoose. You can write all the SQL queries, you can post it. So this module you can use here in the configuration, configure your username, password, and where is that server is running. So if it's a local host and port number, other things. So you can configure your database right here. Then you have to create a connection. SQL.connect configuration, it will create a connection using the request. On the request query, write your query. That query will be giving the record. So on this particular way, you should be able to connect to MySQL. If you want to connect to MongoDB, the two modules are available. One is Mongoose, another one is MongoDB. These two things are very famous NPM modules. But highly I prefer Mongoose over MongoDB, because this Mongoose will be having more schemas and security related issues, and it will be having its own indexing also. So it will improve the performance. From Pramod, we have a question. Can we, sorry, from Vengat, can you please explain what is blocking and non-blocking mechanism? Yeah, sure, Vengat. For example, I have 3 requests. My first request will take 5 seconds, second request will take 2 seconds, and third request will take again 5 seconds, right? So each and every request I'm pushing. My first request is taking 5 seconds, right? But second request is taking only 2 seconds. So what will happen is, till that first request finishes, second request has to wait if it is processing parallelly also. But here in Node.js it won't happen. So what will happen, each and every process will be pushed to the event loop. From the event loop, this will be passed to this thread pool. In the thread event loop, everything will be having its own callback methods. Once the second request is processed in 2 seconds itself, just it will call its own callback method. It won't wait for first request finish. This is what we are calling it as a non-blocking mechanism. If you are working in a synchronous way or a blocking way, what will happen? It has to wait till the first request complete. Once the first request complete, then only it will process the second request and it will give the response. This is the non-blocking mechanism of Node.js. From Ganesh, we have a question. Will new instance of Mongo created for each and every request? It won't create a new instance. Whenever you are starting your application, we are using this mongo.connect. Over there, we will be creating only one instance. With that instance only, we will be playing. Or if you are using this MongoDB module, what will happen is, it will create, you can create and you can destroy the instance for each and every request. That is how you are writing the programs. From Ganesh again we have one question. What is the difference between JavaScript callback and Node.js callback? So in Node.js also you are writing the JavaScript method only. There is no difference between JavaScript callback and Node.js callback. It is totally same. From Kunal, the last question we will take. From Kunal we have that last question. What is the best unit testing method for Node.js? We have a number of unit testing methods like Jasmine, Mocha, or Kapi. If you ask me, I prefer Jasmine or Mocha. Normally, in our projects, we are using Mocha unit test cases. That is really simple, and as usual, it is giving a proper result cases. So that's why I prefer Mocha or Jasmine. So we in our today's webinar we can see how can we use Mocha unit testing for Node.js also. Okay, let's go to the PPT again. It's coming from the beginning. Okay. So already we have seen how to create a simple web server. Now in this PPT, what we are showing is how can we create a server with only the HTTP module. HTTP module is a Node internal module. You need not to install it through the npm. But if you are creating a server using the HTTP, it will be really difficult. Instead of that, we are using the Express module. Express module internally using this HTTP server, and you should be able to create the server using Express itself. Here also we will be doing in the same way using the HTTP dot create the server, and that server dot listen to particular port, and if you want to give your IP you can give. If it is running in local, you need not to give this IP, just give dot listen. That will be listening for that particular IP. This is how we will be creating a basic server, and we have seen how to write routes using Express.js also. Next, this is one of the nice feature in Node.js. So normally these traditional web applications, what it will do, once it gets the request from your client, then only for that particular request it will give the response. That is a normal way. For example, I wanted to build something like a Facebook chat or Gmail hangout. So what is happening whenever other user, for example, we have two users. One user just pinging the another user. Whenever he sends the data, automatically this data has been pushed to the another user client. How is it happening? Because if you send the request, then only server can give the response. But here you are not making any other request. From other people's server, you are pushing the data to the client. This is a reverse way. How can we handle it? You can't handle it with the normal HTTP methods. For this, Node.js is having one more module called socket.io. This internally uses the events. So in Node.js events, it will be having three types. One is normal readable streams, writable streams, and duplex streams. So using this readable stream, you can only read the data. Writable streams, you can write the data. And duplex stream, you can read or write. If you ask me, this socket.io is using the duplex stream. So you should be able to read as well as write the data. And these streams are internally using the events component. Whoever used the basic JavaScript, they might have known how to add the listener or remove the listeners. In the same way, here using the event concept of this JavaScript, we can build a basic socket.io program. So let's go to this program. Let me close other files. Yeah. Now, so I want to build an basic chat application. Just whenever I send any other chat, it has to push the data to everyone. Later, I will show you one more application where you can send a data to particular user also. So this is the basic application. Again, I'm using the same framework, Express. And here you can see I'm using one more component that is called socket.io. So what I'm doing, I'm creating an app and I'm passing that particular server to this socket. So if you want to pass, just you will be passing that server to this instance, and instance will be available on this IO. Next, if you see, I'm just creating basic HTTP listen or app.listen to this particular port. This is the normal way how we listen our application. Now we created a basic server, but I want to create the sockets. How can we create? So this HTTP server has been passed to this socket.io. It has been passed to the socket.io, and the socket instance will be available on this variable called IO. So if any user connect to this HTTP, automatically that will trigger an event called connection, and these events will be having listeners. So you can specifically watch for some kind of listeners. For example, let's take an example of radio stations. So what radio stations are doing is just they are broadcasting their program on particular frequency. If you take the Suryan FM example, they will be giving their programs in 93.5. Okay, so whoever wants to listen that program on their radio, they will listen for that frequency. For example, if 10 people are listening to that frequency, all 10 will be listening that program, right? In the same way, what we are doing, we'll be, whenever user connects to this HTTP method, it will trigger an event called connections. So whoever listen for this connection, it will come to that method and it will be executing those functions. Now once the user has been connected, it will emit an event, and that event will be captured on this method, and we should be able to get the data. So let's first run this application, and I can walk through you to this code. Let me come out of this MongoDB. See, it is space. I have that application is on this chat folder, chat, and I want to start this application, index.js. Okay, now this chat application has started and it is listening on port number 3000. Let me go over here. Localhost 3000. So in our old example, we have done everything using the Postman, but I want to build a chat application. We are not going to concentrate on the UI side. Let's see what we have it in the server. First, it is asking for the name. I'm just entering some name, user1. Yeah, login. So let's see the UI side code of it. JavaScript and here. So whenever user clicks on this form submit, in the UI they are emitting a method, socket.emit chat user. This is like a particular radio station is broadcasting the program on particular frequency. So they are emitting a method called set user, and they are sending some information to the server side. Whatever I entered over there in the small box, that will be sent to the server side. This is what we are doing. Socket.emit set chat user, and we will be passing some data. Now I want to listen for this specific event called set chat user. Let's go for our server side. The server side is available on this index.js. Here you can see socket.on. If you want to send the data, we will be using the emit method, and if you want to listen any other data, we will be using on method. Socket.on set chat user. On this particular callback function, you will be getting the data, whatever data you send from the UI. So we passed some name from there, so that name will be available, and we are pushing that name to the one variable called user name list. So whenever I write any other messages, the message will be passed to all the name. So this is what we are doing. Then what I am doing, io.socket.emit new user joined. Right, so I'm emitting one more event, and this event you will be having whoever user has been joined. So then I have one more listening function that is called chat message. So let me log in this to another user also. So it is like I'm opening it in another tab. So if I hit the server, it will be like a new user. Again, localhost 3000. Here I'm going to do a user2. So if I send any other message, what will happen? It is giving user2 sent a message something. So if you see it in the user1 window, over there also this message has been pushed. I am not refreshing or anything. Whenever I send any message from this particular user, this message will be pushed to user2. You can see here. In user1 send this. From user2 I am going to send a message hi. So I'm just sending from hi from here. If you go to the next tab, so that message will be available. In the same way, we can implement a chat application. If you are opening it as a new user, over there also. It is not a one-to-one chat, it is like a chat room. I will tell you why it is happening like this. So let's go to the UI. Now, whenever user clicks on that particular send button on the chat, it will call this method. From this method, I'm calling the emit method. Socket.emit, because I want to send this chat message to the server. So I'm sending that socket.emit chat message. I'm giving whatever message they have written. So that message will be passed to the server. So in the server we have to watch for an event called chat message. So let's go to the server side, and here you can see socket.on. Whenever you are getting a chat message, just print the chat message on the server console and pass this data to all the servers, all the users connected to the server. So io.sockets will be having all the user information, and we are emitting that particular data to all the users. Socket, chat message and data. From server you are emitting. Now if you are emitting from the server, you should be able to get the data in the UI also. So in the client side, again I will be listening for this chat.message. So in the socket.io chat.message I am listening in the client side, and you should be able to read the data over here. So from here I am pushing the data in the client. This is how we will be having creating one application using socket.io. So this message, so if I log in as a one more user, here I am going to log in localhost 3000. Let me log in as a user 3. Now if I send one message, hello from user 3. I am sending one message from user 3. That message will be available in user 2 as well as user 1, because we are not sending a message to specific person, just we are sending io.sockets of all. Here you can see in our server side, whenever the chat message is going, we are emitting the message to io.sockets. We are not specific sending message to the specific user. This is why all the messages are going to whoever joined in our server. But that's not a correct way, because whenever I send a message, I will be sending to particular person. So let's see how can we do that. Let me run another one program. So here whatever we printed in the console, that has been printed right here. I'm just going to cut this out. Let me start one more program. Okay, now again this is one also is listening to port number 3000. Let me start this. This program fully I built using AngularJS and Node.js. You can see all the AngularJS animations here and there, and I want to log in. So if I want to log in, first I'm login with user 1 Dinesh. Again I'm login Dinesh. This user has been logged in. So let me open another tab. Here I'm going to log in with another one username. Let me log in here with frame. So here I join. So whenever you open this live chat, you can see whoever is in online. Only I logged in with Dinesh and Prem. In the Prem window, only it will show Dinesh in available. In Dinesh window, if you see, only Prem is available right here. Now I want to send some message to Prem. Just click on the Prem. I'm opening the window. From here, I'm sending the data. Hello Prem. Once I push the data, if you see it in the Prem window, that data will be available. Hello Prem. From here you can see the data that will be passed to only Dinesh, because we are sending to specific person. So how can we send data to specific person? Let's take a look. I'm going to stop the server. Let me open that file. So here you can see I have done everything in the same way, io.connection and io.send message. But one more thing I used before in the example you could have seen io.sockets.emit. So whoever joined in our application, for everyone I was emitting the data. But now right here I am getting the data client.user ID. Whatever user ID I am getting from the UI, for that particular user ID alone I am emitting the data. So if you are emitting the data using this dot connected, whoever connected get that particular user ID and send the information. So if you are doing it in this particular way, we will be sending the data to only that specific user. This is how we will be using socket.io in Node.js. If you guys have any other question regarding this socket.io, please post your questions on this question window. From Kunal, we have a question. Can socket.io can be used for any other use cases except chat messaging? Yeah, if you want to build kind of mail or other things, for that also mail also you have to push the data. You need not to wait for each and every time you need to send the request. For that you can use it. And one more thing is, for example, something is running on the background. For that will be taking 40 minutes or more than that to process the data. So once the data is completed, you have to send something to the UI. Okay, this has been completed. Okay, otherwise in the traditional web application, what you have to do, you have to post the request. You have to wait for it. Otherwise, normally if you are waiting for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, automatically the request will be rejected by the browser. That also will happen. But once you emit the data, okay, I want to start this process. So that process will be started on the background. Once the process is completed, again I want to emit one data from the background. Process has been completed. So we can listen for this particular completed progress on our UI. Once the progress has been completed, you can do whatever the operation you wanted to do. So like this also you can use socket.io. From Madhav, we have a appreciation like he loved, it seems, this Metro's website. Thanks, Madhav. From Bint, we have a question. Can we use the socket for mobile chat? Exactly. This socket is actually running on the server side. So in the client side also, you'll be using the socket.js. It will be fully supported in mobile, tablet, and normal browsers also. So you can use it in your mobile. From Kunal, we have one more question. Is that webinar also can be considered as a socket.io? Yeah, so the webinar, whatever questions you are pushing, that also can be a socket.io. And one more thing in the website you could have seen, we can draw, I mean 2 or 3 people, multiple people can draw on a single page using this socket only. So you can Google it and you will be getting this particular example for socket.io. From Bint, we have a question. If you want to do group chat in web application instead of one-to-one, what can we do? In Socket, we have one more method called rooms. Using that room, will be having the join method. And that using the join method, you can connect to particular room. So whoever joined to that particular room, you can emit the data to that room. So those users will be listening for those messages. So if you want to create kind of group chat web application, you can use iosocket.join method. Okay, so let's go for the next example. Let me go to the PPT. Where is it? Yeah, this is the one. So we have seen this two-way communication using socket.io. Normally, the traditional application will be having one-way communication, that is client to server. But using the socket.io, you can push the data. That's why we are calling it as a two-way communication or real-time communication. Here you will be having two methods, emit and on. So emit for broadcast the data, on for listen the data. Next, we have seen the simple example of chat application using the socket on and emit. So already we have seen the example of Node.js useful use of RESTful APIs with Node.js. Using the Express module, we created basic REST APIs using app.get and app.post, and you can handle all the requests and responses. So just a basic theory about this REST API. So REST stands for representational state transfer. So before and all, we will be using only this servlet, which whenever you pass the data, the full page will be reloaded, because you have to submit your form. That form will be passed to the servlet. From there, you will be responding the data, redirecting the page. But here, I don't want to reload the full page, because if you are reloading the page, this application, whatever you have it in the client side, that will be gone. I don't want to do this. Because of that only, this Ajax or HTTP methods has come. So you can push only the partial data. That partial data you can process on the backend. You can give the response. So that's why we'll be using this kind of RESTful APIs. So what are all the methods is available in this RESTful APIs? Get, post, put method. So you can use it in our Express also for these kind of methods. So already we have seen the RESTful APIs demo. Next, this is the biggest thing. Now we are building the application, but I want to debug it. So how can we debug? Do we have any other tool for it? So if you are a Java developer, you will be having Eclipse or IntelliJ. In the IntelliJ, just directly you can set the debugger point and you can run it. But here what we are doing, just it's a JavaScript program, and how can we run, and do we have any other tool? If you are ready to pay, you can go for IntelliJ and or WebStorms. On those tools you should be able to add the debugger point, but for those tools you have to pay. Instead of that, what I prefer is, I'm just using the Sublime editor. You guys can see that is a really free version. You can use it over there, and using this editor itself, I want to debug. How can we do this? If you want to debug your Node application, you have to install one module called Node Inspect. Let me show you that. Let's go to the browser. Let me close everything. Already stopped the server, that's why. Let me close it. So this is the module npm node inspect. Using this module, we should be able to debug your application. However, we are debugging in normal Chrome browser. So in the Chrome browser, you can add the debugger point in the consoles, or we'll be having the sources. On the sources, you can add your debugger point and you can debug your application. In the same way, here instead of just running your application with node and application name, you just run it with node and -debug and whatever that particular JavaScript name. So that file will be available in your Chrome browser. On the Chrome browser, however, you can debug the normal JavaScript. So you can debug with your server side application. And one more function also we have, that is normal node debugger. So that node debugger, the trouble is you can debug only in the terminal. If you want to debug the very large scale application in the terminal, it will be really difficult. That's why on this webinar we will be using node debug to debug the application. So let's go to the terminal once again. I wanted to start this application. Oh man, let me close this. Yeah, here. I don't have anything, just I have a basic file. One var a equal to 10, var b equal to 50, and I want to print the result. This is what I have. Let me run this. Let me run this in the terminal. Node app.js. It is printing the data 60, but I'm going to make one mistake over here. Instead of plus, I'm going to make minus. Now what will happen, whenever I run this application, I will be getting some minus data, but if I go through the code, only 2 or 3 lines means you should be able to get it. But if it's a large scale application, it is really difficult. without debugging. So how can we debug? For that, what we are going to do, we are going to use this module called node inspect. So this is a global module. So if you want to install this module, just run this command npm install -g. Because it's a global, you can use it for all the application. So node inspect -g and node inspector. So it will install it in your terminal or in your system. So once it has been installed, you should be able to run your application instead of node to node debug dot whatever that file name. That file name will be listening to the port number, and the port number will give all the files available on this particular application. So you can see it on the right hand side, what are all the dependencies internally it is having this node inspector. So these are all the dependencies it's have, and whoever depend on this particular file, that also will be available right here. Okay, now let's debug the application. Now instead of node app.js, what I am going to do, node debug app.js. Instead of printing the data in our console, it will open the same data on this particular port. It will search for a whatever available port number. On this particular port number, it will open this data. Now let's go to the browser. You can see whatever file available on this application, all the files will be available. Now I have only one file, that is app.js. So that app.js file is available. Now just go over there. Wherever you want to add the debugger point, just add it. So for example, I want to add a debugger point right here. So if you want to debug, just click on this. It is like a normal Chrome debugger. Just click F10 to next line, or F11 to go inside the function, F8 to execute similarly. So I'm just going one by one. Now I can check what I have it in the B. So it's giving the data. In the same way, if I want to see whatever A minus B, just mouse over, it will give the data. Right? So in this way, you should be able to debug the basic Node.js application. So this is the debugging Node.js application with Node debugger. Now I came out of the debugger and it is giving, this is the result. See here, C minus 40. Now okay, let me close this. Now let's go for unit testing. Before that, do you guys have any other question on no debug? From Anvarasi, we have a question. Whether this video will be available to access? Yeah, exactly. So in our Edureka website, this recorded session will be available. You can take a look over there. Do you guys have any other question regarding this node inspect or debugging node application? From Madhav, we have a question. Can we get the code? So please send a request to our support teams. They can able to assist you on this. Okay, where is it? I need to get my PPT. FI. Yeah, this is it. Okay, no debugging. So here in the example, you can see just no debug. There is this normal Node.js debug way, but using this way, you should be able to debug only in the server side. Instead of that, we can use node inspect debugger. You can debug it in the Chrome browser. Next, unit testing. So before that, we have some question. Let me see that. From Dhanjay, we have a question. Is there any tool where we can write the debug something like Eclipse? So you can use IntelliJ or WebStorm. Using this, you should be able to debug it on the tool itself. But if you are using these kind of tools, you have to pay for it. Only first month is free. Next, you have to pay. If you want to use the free versions, you can go for this npm modules. Next, unit testing. So what is it first, unit testing? Whenever developer builds their application, they have to write unit test code for the each and every method whatever they are writing. So we can't cover all the scenarios with the normal manual testing or this kind of automated, right? So whenever you write your particular method, for that method write your unit test cases. Okay, this method is giving the expected result or not. So for the error whatever produced by this code, it will be really reduced. So in the unit testing, we'll be having two methods. One is the TDD, another one is the BDD. So what does this mean by TDD and BDD? TDD is a test driven development. So first we will be writing all your test cases, then we will be writing the method. Because first you will complete the test case. For that test case, you will be writing the method. Then whatever input you are giving the test case, everything will be successful. So the percentage of error produced by your particular method, that will be really reduced. The another one is the BDD. So it's a behavior driven development. Here it is like derived from this TDD only. Here first we will be getting whatever the behaviors we have in our application. Regarding that, we will be writing the test cases. Then we can build the methods. This is the just two methods we have in the unit testing. Okay, next one. So what are all the modules we can use it for unit testing? One is Mocha, Jasmine, Chai, and other modules are also available. But so mostly all the modules are normal npm and free version. Using these modules, you should be able to build the unit test cases. Now I will show you how can we build the unit test cases using Mocha and Jasmine. Okay, so let's go for an example. First, let me close other programs, whatever I read. Yeah, it's done. Here I have a simple program where add a and b, whatever data I am passing to this add function, it has to return the data. This is the just program. I want to write for this method all the test cases. How can we write it? First, I'm not going to use any other npm module, just I'm going to use the default node module available, that is assert. So this assert will be checking for truthy and falsy condition. It is not just boolean true and false, it is truthy and falsy, because there many things are available. Like 1 is a truthy, 0 is falsy, or undefined is falsy, right? Some string data if you have, that is considered as a truthy. This is how the truthy and falsy will be differed. Now here I'm not going to use any other npm module, just with the assert we are going to write the test cases. Let's see how bad it is. Then if you are using any other Jasmine, it will be improved your test case also. First I'm having on this assert method. So then I want to test this file, that app.js. Now I have this app.js, just I have only a plus b, it has to result, right? So go over here and I have this app.js and the test cases. In the test case, I have this assert method, and that assert method I'm getting that file, I'm using that method. Add 1, 2, and I'm checking assert.equal whether the result is 3. Whatever adding the result, so this will result something, and is this equal to this 3? Because in the test cases, you know the result also. You will be passing some input. For this input, I'm expecting this result. This is what we will be doing for unit test cases. So here I'm expecting for this result as 3, and if it prints anything, we can print some failed. If it is not printing, means that is success. This is how we will be using this assert method. Let me run this. Here I am going to run this unit test case. First, node app. So now it is not at all giving any other output. That means there is no other error, because this is doesn't make sense, right? So if it is having error, it has to give. If it is not having error, it has to give, okay, this test case has been passed. That also it has to give. Nothing happening over here. That is not at all good. Now whenever I change this 1,6 I am sending, so it has to return 7, but I am expecting it has to return 3. That is failed. but see the test message how it is failed. So it is giving some kind of error. It is not giving like a status, right? This is really difficult to use the internal node module. Instead of this, what we are going to use, we are going to use the Mocha. That is one more global level module available in Node.js for the testing. Let's see. So here also I have the same file, function add a comma b, and it has to return a plus b. In the testing it will be really clear. I'm going to use this assert, and in this you can group everything. For example, in my application, if I have n number of methods, for 3 methods is for this functionality and other methods for other functionality, I want to group it. So if you want to group, you will be using this describe method. Using the describe method, you will be grouping. This is for this function, and I'm writing my first test case. I have one array, and that array I'm checking the length. So whether if it is equal, it has to assert that equal, and this one, if it is failed, it has to give some other information. This is how I will be writing the test case. One is the describe, will be grouping by, and the specific test case will be available on it, and inside that test case I will be writing it assert that equal, this one are not equal. Okay, first I'm just going to comment this. I want to show a basic example, then we'll go for the complex one. Here I have two groups. One group is for add block, right? So I'm expecting some messages you can use, so that messages will be available on the terminal. That's why we are having this. Then I'm sum of 3 and 4 expecting 7, right? And assert that equal, in the same way I'm expecting 7. For that method I'm passing 3 and 4. This is what my first test case. Let me comment this also. Now I have only one group, and that group is having only one test case. Now I want to run this one. So let's go there. So to run those test cases, we'll be using Mocha add.spec. So what is it? Add.test. Test.js, right? So whenever you run this particular thing, it will give a result. Okay, let me clear it properly. Let me give you. Yeah. Whenever I run this, it is going to this add block. So this is the describe method, whatever you are having. This is the first group, and this is the test case I'm running. So sum of 3, 4 expecting 7. It is success, then only it is giving tick mark in green color. So if it is failed, for example, I'm going to change this. Run this. Now it is inside this block, and this test case is failed, red color, and it gives the result 0 passed, 1 failed. Whatever failed, that also will be available right here. So it will be giving a proper result if you are using Jasmine or Mocha. So if you want to run the Jasmine test cases, the same code, instead of running it as a Mocha, we'll be running it as a Jasmine. Jasmine. Not this. Jasmine add.test. Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't install this Jasmine. That's why it is throwing an error. So in the same way, if you want to install the Jasmine, you have to use this Jasmine JSON help us. This is one more thing we have to use it. So the Jasmine, whenever you are installing the Jasmine, it will create the spec. In the spec, we will be mentioning, okay, these are all the things I wanted to do. After you create the spec, then only you should be able to run the Jasmine scripts. So, but if you see the test cases, everything will be same. Describe, E8 and assert equal. There is no change. Only one difference, you should have your spec method. So because to install this, just before that, just write npm install Jasmine. It will give everything for you. Okay. Now we have seen the basic test case in Mocha, but I want to create some kind of complex. Before I run the test case, I want to do some kind of operations. For that, we will be having one method called before each. On the before each, you can do some operation. That functions will be available on your test case. So this is how we'll be doing it. So before I run the test case, I want to do something. Then I want to write the test case. So I will be using this before each. Let me run this. I will be getting the result. Whenever I run this test case, the first test case is ran and it is failed. Some of this thing expecting 3 and 4, 7, but it is giving some other result. And the second test case also failed. So here you can see the passing is 0 and failed is 2. You can see whatever the reason it is failed. It is expecting 3, but sorry, it is expecting 7, but it is giving the result as 3. Here also it is expecting 7, it is giving the result as a 6. Sorry, it is expecting a 6, it is giving the result as 7. So this is how we will be writing all the test cases using Mocha. So it will give the proper result over here. So if you guys have any other question regarding this unit testing or Jasmine, just post your questions in the question window. From Sheshatri, we have a question. How Node.js is different from AngularJS? Which one is best? Node.js and AngularJS is totally different. Node.js is a client-side framework and AngularJS is a runtime environment which you can write all your server-side programming. So Node.js is only for the server side and AngularJS is only for the client side. It's totally different. You can't compare these two. It is like comparing apple with orange. Personally, if you ask me, client side, you can compare with the Ember or Knockout, the AngularJS. And in the server side, you'll be having Java, PHP, and Node like this. So Kunal is asking, which is the most widely used unit testing library? Yeah, Kunal. So I can answer it for this question, but I will let you find that one also for answer. So if you want to know which module has been used widely, what you can do, just go to that npm module. Over there you can see how many people are using this module. For this node inspect, nearly 1,30,000 people are using. In the same way, you can see for Mocha how many people are using. Just go over here, check the npm module downloads. Nearly these many people are using Mocha and the Jasmine. Here you can see. So it is something nearly 3 million, but for that one we are having nearly 19 million users are using Mocha. So now you should get to know which one is the best one, Jasmine or Mocha. I strongly prefer Mocha than Jasmine, but if you have some other frameworks like Chai and other things comes to the picture, means these two are the top frameworks for node unit testing. Okay, we came into the end of our today's webinar. If you have any question, just post the last few questions, we will take that. From Kunal, we have a question. What is concept of web worker in Node.js? So whenever you are creating multiple instances using the cluster, what will happen? Those cluster will create a web workers internally, right? So each and every instance or these things will be created by the web worker, and on this cluster you can watch, okay, whether this instances has been created or not. Using the fork method, we will be fork the instance, and this instance will be calling it as a web workers. So each and everything will process the separate records or separate processes. So exception handling in Node.js. So it is like a normal JavaScript. You can write try catch finally for exception handling in Node.js. There is no difference between normal JavaScript and Node.js. You can write the normal try catch. Okay, really thank you very much guys for attending this webinar. And in Edureka we have Node.js classes, so it will be nearly 8 hours class, sorry 8 modules, so each and every module will be 3 hours. So totally we will be having 24 hours class each and every weekend for this Node.js. So who are interested, you can register on our website. And if you want to know more detail about this Node.js session and other things, just go to our edureka.co. From there, you should be able to get the more information. Really, thank you very much for this attending session. If you guys have any other questions, please post your questions to our support team. Our support team should be able to answer for all your questions. Once again, guys, thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye bye. See you.